Hi, Potterheads. This is Expecto Podcastium. We are your hosts. My name is Jess.
I'm Erica.
And I'm Mega.
This episode, we will be discussing the first 5 chapters of the first book, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, as well as the way we felt like when we read the book for the first time. Mega, what were your first thoughts and feelings when you read the first book for the very first time? How old were you again?
I was very young. I think I was maybe six-ish. As I've told you two, I did not want to read Harry Potter in the beginning. I was very much against reading this series that my friends and siblings were obsessed with. But I think the moment I started reading Sorcerer's Stone, well, as we call it, Sorcerer's Stone, I was hooked. It was the first line literally caught my attention. It's so iconic. And from then on, I was a Potterhead for life. But yeah, looking back, it's like all the nostalgia. It was so exciting to read about this kid like me because Harry was 11, and that's young for a series is. And to hear him go on this amazing adventure, and he was like an outsider coming from the outside and joining this amazingly magical world. And it was like, I want to be that person. I want to go to Hogwarts.
When I first started Philosopher's Stone, so I think I may have mentioned this. So I had been wanting to read Harry Potter forever. I was 21 or 22, I can't remember exactly, but it was literally like 8 p.m. at night, and the library is down the street from where I live. And I just kind of made this last minute decision. It's like, you know what? I'm going to do it. So I walked down the street, got Philosopher's Stone, and walked out. And like I remember that day so clearly because I had just moved before then, and like I went to a different library before, so I had to like get a new library card. And I just remember I don't know, I remember the day exactly, if that makes sense. And I remember when I got home, I read the first chapter, and then I went to sleep after that because it was kind of late and I was tired. But I remember just kind of feeling this feeling of like, I'm actually doing this. Proud of myself. And I remember just enjoying like getting introduced to each of the characters and liking each part of it. And, you know, by the end of it, I had this feeling of like, okay, I want more. And that is how I know that I liked it, because I am always like, most books that I have read have all been like a series of books, because like I get attached to characters easily. So I knew that I was gonna love this by the end by like feeling that way of like wanting more, you know? And I remember I had this feeling of just like, this is a new adventure starting. Reading it again brings back memories because like I hadn't read it since the first time I read it. So
Yeah, I definitely understand that. My first time reading it, I was in high school. I must have been in grade, I think must have been in like grade 11. And the reason I started, like Mega, I was like really reluctant to read it just because I hate reading anything that's not fan fiction still. And so I only read it then because like all the movies had come out, and I was like, well, this can't be it. And my sister was fine, like just go read the books for goodness sake, like read the books. They're so much better than the movies. And I was like, yeah, I don't like reading, and so whatever. I just sucked it up and I started reading the books. We had a cover. We had like the first book, and I don't remember it super clearly, like starting to read it, but I just remember enjoying the characters. I remember enjoying like the rhythm of the writing and the pace of the book. And even though it kind of went slow-ish, it was still like well paced, and there was like so much detail, and there was so much to say, even though it happened in like such a short amount of time. And so it was just like a pleasant reading experience. And It took me a couple of chapters to get into it, but after he kind of like entered the magical world, after he was introduced to Ron, I was basically hooked. But that's probably more to do with my obsession with one beautiful Ronald Weasley. I remember also, I mean, obviously, it made me feel very nostalgic because I saw the movies first. It was very nice. And something that was interesting, basically, Mega, with you, I was the same age as Harry when the movies came out. So I was also 11 when the first movie came out. And so I grew up with like the on screen Harry, if that makes any sense. I grew up with like Daniel Radcliffe and like Rupert and Emma. And so it kind of felt nostalgic, if that makes any sense, because I was like reading back into like my childhood, except now with so much more detail and like so much, I mean, obviously accuracy and so much more about like the magical world. And so it was like a very positive experience for me, and I really enjoyed it.
That's awesome. Something that you mentioned, Jess, was that like the first book kind of a little bit slower, but like well paced. I'm kind of curious for both of you. I know that a lot of my friends have been trying to get to read Harry Potter now said like the first book is just so slow and so boring because like I guess they're older and they're used to more fast paced books. So for either of you guys, was the first book like the pacing at all like boring at any time?
I did find it a little bit boring at times just because there's definitely like a lot less action or intensity or maybe like emotion. Like it's emotional, but it's not as emotional as the next ones. Like in Chamber of Secrets we have like more it's more a little bit more intense. Like it definitely like I of all the books like Philosopher's Stone doesn't stand out as much as like some of the other ones. So I think I agree to that to some degree, but I still enjoy it. Just because it was kind of like the turning point of like the first step, for me at least, to my obsession that's taken over part of my life.
Yeah, I have to say, like I said, even though it was well paced, I did find especially the first few chapters to be kind of slow, but it was still enjoyable.
Yeah.
What about you, Vega?
I mean, because when I started reading it, I was like, it was very well paced for me being a little kid.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I know that so many of my friends, like in even in middle school, but also especially like in high school and college, they said like, "Oh my gosh, it's so hard to get into these books because like the first ones are so slow and boring and less, like Erica said, like emotional. While like later it gets more like intense and like higher stakes, and I guess almost like deeper."
I
Yeah.
remember like the first chapter that kind of got me a little more hooked was The Mirror of Erised
Yeah.
because that was like Harry was like looking at his parents, and I was just like, oh my god, this poor like orphaned little kid here. So
Yeah.
I remember that that was where it kind of the emotion came out more, and that kind of turned the stakes for me into a little bit more like that was by that one that was kind of where I was like, okay, I'm gonna stick with this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I feel like looking back, it's kind of weird actually because when we were reading these chapters for this podcast, and my mind was continuously playing like the music from the movie, like the kind of like fond,
Yeah.
reminiscing music. I feel like that's how I associate with this book, this one especially. It's like it's more of like a fond nostalgia, like you know.
Yeah. One thing just this that reminded me there was when I was reading this, I had like a reminder go off on my phone, or no, it was an alarm that I had set. And when I was going back and reading this, it was like I was all quiet and focused on the book, and then the alarm went off, and I literally like in my alarm is the Harry Potter theme song. So I literally like threw the book in the air and like screamed, and I was like, "Wow, that's like right there, very ironic."
It's amazing.
That was just like when I reread it for this, not like the first time. But
Yeah,
yeah.
that's amazing.
It was. Made me laugh.
should we dive into the first chapter?
Sounds
Yeah.
good.
I think I speak for everyone. I found, again, yeah, the first five chapters to be kind of like not boring, but like not too much happens. I mean, we're obviously it's like an introduction to this whole other world, so I guess that's more than enough. But obviously, having read the books before, I kind of knew all of it, and so it just seemed like it was quite slow this time around. But nevertheless, yeah, like you said, Mega, earlier in your introduction, that first line is so iconic. It's like, Mr. and Mrs. Dudley, we're proud to say that they were perfectly normal. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
The first sentence, it kind of gives you, it honestly gives you an idea of the Dursleys, which I think is really good. One thing about this first chapter is it definitely introduces each of the characters that we get to see into it really well. Specifically, the part where we have Hagrid, Dumbledore, and McGonagall dropping off Harry. One thing about that part is it introduces the role that these three characters will play in Harry's life so perfectly. You know, we have Dumbledore, the friend who's there for advice and believes in Harry no matter what. We have McGonagall, the like strict, worrisome teacher who, wants to make sure Harry's okay, but also is like, you know what I mean. And then we have Hagrid, who's so caring and worried about Harry, and like he cries at the end, and like, oh, Hagrid, Hagrid's just the most amazing like person ever.
I was gonna say, like, he's just the sweetest. He's the sweetest character. He's
So sweet.
he's like a gentle giant. That's literally what he is. He's a
Yeah.
gentle giant, like a Great Dane, or I don't know. He's just the cutest, and he's so patient. I mean, like, imagine if you are like this normal person, like the Wizarding World is like normal for him, and then suddenly you like, have like this like little 11-year-old who's asking you all these like irritating questions all the time, like things that like are like basic knowledge, and you just have to like explain everything. But he's so happy, he's excited to explain everything to him, and then
Yeah.
it's the
Well,
sweetest thing.
It's not even like swallowing down like annoyance or anything like that. It's not even being like overly like patient like that. It's just like he just genuinely seems to love it, you know? He genuinely
Yeah,
seems to care so much about Harry and like loves opening his eyes to this amazing world and stuff.
yeah. We'll talk more about that when we get to that chapter 4.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Chapter 1 is like the part where we're following around Vernon is just kind of slow, and it like gives you an idea that Vernon is like not a great character.
yeah.
But the part that I really love is when they drop off Harry, because it's just like it's sweet, and like I said, I love I think they perfectly introduce the role that these three characters will play in Harry's life.
And they
Yeah.
also mentioned Sirius,
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
which is of course something you don't realize until you read back. But like for us people who know the books and the series,
one thing about that is like I know how in Prisoner of Azkaban, or I think it's Prisoner of Azkaban, they kind of introduce what happened that day, but like I guess they find out the lie after they drop off Harry.
yeah,
Yeah.
because after that fact, like after Sirius gives Hagrid the motorcycle, that's when Sirius runs off and kills the 13 like the Muggles and like Pettigrew. So like if you think about it, that sort of stuff was kind of happening while we were being introduced to
Yeah.
Dumbledore and McGonagall and Hagrid. Like while they were dropping off Harry,
Mhm.
Sirius was off chasing down Peter.
Yeah.
So
And that's funny because you can,
yeah,
when you go and reread it, that's where you can like put the lines together, you know?
yeah,
Like it's like the locket being mentioned in Order of the Phoenix.
yeah.
Oh my god, yes.
Oh my god, mind blown. All these little like hints.
Yeah, she puts in all these like Easter eggs where like the first time, like when people are reading them right after they came out, it's just kind of like something. But then when you read the Easter egg it is for that book, you're like, oh
And I guess another big one is like the whole thing with Chamber of Secrets. Well, when we get to Chamber of Secrets, I guess we'll talk about it. But like the diary, and then you find out like books later. Oh my gosh, it's a Horcrux! What?
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a big one. Yeah, so again, like you said, I mean, that's the first chapters. Yeah, we're introduced to Dursleys and all like the kind of characters, and she like, although I don't support the author anymore with like her recent tweets and things, we can't deny that she's an excellent writer.
Let's just make a statement here. So, with regards to J.K. Rowling, I think as a fandom in general, we've kind of separated the person from the author. So like we don't agree with some of her values and opinions, but we know that she made these amazing books and we can appreciate that part of her
Yes.
without, like we just want to make that clear to any listeners. We don't agree with her opinions, but we acknowledge that she wrote some good books. So
Yeah, exactly. So I just think it was really brilliant the way she introduced the characters, the way Erica said before. And yeah, we get a pretty good idea. I couldn't say it better. Anything that I'd say now is repeating exactly what you said. That's the first chapter for me as well. You just do see how awful the Dursleys are, how awful Mr. Dursley is. It's just like he
I'm
seems like one of those like disgusting fat white old men who works in Wall Street and like abuses his family.
I don't think he works on Wall Street.
No,
Isn't
no, obviously he doesn't, but
he
like he
sells
just
drugs?
comes across as
And
like that type of character.
yeah, he's unpleasant and just kind of like snooty.
Yeah,
I think
Yeah.
that's it for chapter one. And probably go to
yeah.
chapter two, the vanishing glass.
So chapter two opens up like a decade later when Harry's 11, and right away, like kind of thrown into the whole. He's living in a cupboard. He wakes up super early and cooks breakfast for the Dursleys. He like isn't treated as one of them. There was I think point to like there were pictures on the walls, but none of them had Harry in them. It's Dudley's birthday, and we see how like he's grown up to be a bit of a spoiled brat. Um, so like, oh, he only has 37 presents. He wants one more because one fewer than last year, and then his parents fall over themselves to get him new presents, stuff like that.
It almost seems like they're scared of him.
Yeah, right. It's like kind of, but yeah, and then you also kind of I feel like start seeing a bit into sassy Harry's head with like I
Yeah.
feel like he has like a few thoughts of times like, oh my god, Dudley and these people, they're also crazy, and oh my god, I can't believe they're like this. And
Yeah.
then, of course, one of my favorite scenes is when they take Harry to the zoo because they can't leave him alone because this big another Easter egg, which we find out more about later, like broke her leg or something. Yeah, but they take her to the zoo, and then he's staring at the snake and like commiserating with the snake, and the glass vanishes and Dudley falls in, and it's like, whoa, what just happened?
Yeah. I I love that chapter. Oh, no, I love that part. It just kind of gives you this satisfaction of just like Harry, yes. And Harry probably felt that way too. He's just like, oh God, I'm in trouble now. But that was so awesome that I made them do that.
There's interesting like dichotomy between like his not so great life, but also he doesn't seem super beaten down, I guess, with it, and he seems to still have like that fire of rebellion. He still has like power.
One thing though that makes me really sad is just like you realize how like horrible they treat him. And like that's all he's ever known.
Yeah.
So it's sad to think about like that has been his whole life. That's what he's been through. And like the one thing that I don't like, but looking back, it's like I also know that at that age, this kind of stuff wasn't as important to people. Is like the low key fat shaming of Dudley, but also like at 11, they weren't having discussions about fat shaming, so it's understandable. But
Yeah. Uh, yeah, I also kind of realize that now, but even when I first read it, I didn't really pick up on that very much.
Yeah.
But I'm glad, and I think if it was if the book was written in this day and age, I think it might have been addressed, and that would have been quite a nice thing. Or maybe it wouldn't have, but
What I like to think is like, maybe Harry later on in life is like, I shouldn't have done that, because like I always headcanon that Dudley kind of definitely matures and like realizes certain mistakes that he's made. I like to think of that.
Was it canon or was it fanon that Dudley has a magical child?
That's fanon.
That's fanon.
yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
I really like that
Yeah, I
headcanon
like the
because
idea too.
yeah.
too, definitely. So chapter 3 picks up straight away after like the boa constrictor catastrophe, and yeah, it gets like very like disheartening again when like you see that he is back in his little cupboard under the stairs.
I just want to quote these first few sentences here because, like, they make me want to cry. So, the escape of the Brazilian boa constrictor earned Harry his longest ever punishment. By the time he was allowed out of his cupboard again, summer holidays had started, and Dudley had already broken his new science camera, crashed his remote control aeroplane, and first time on his racing bike, knocked down old Mrs. Figg as she crossed Privet Drive on her crutches. It just kind of like, I don't know, the whole thing is just kind of sad. It's
Yeah,
like poor Harry, like, oh my god, that's such child abuse.
yeah, that's like very definitely very bad child abuse.
Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking. But like, I don't remember realizing that it was child abuse even when I read it when I was like 17. But yeah, reading it now, like the other day, I was like, oh my god, what the hell?
This chapter, it's really funny just because the part that I find hilarious is like Vernon's like over dramatic worrisome feeling when he gets his Hogwarts letter. They're just like freaking out. They're like, no, we can't do that. No, 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 no. It's hilarious. And like there's one scene from the movie that always comes into my mind, which is such an awesome scene, is when all the letters come out the fire chute and Harry's
Yes.
kind of jumping in the air. It just kind of makes you happy a little bit, but it's this chapter is when it starts getting a little more interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one scene that I think they did very well in the first book was like just the actor who played Mr. Dursley, Vernon. Like I just really liked the way he said like no post on Sundays, no blasted letters today, and like I loved the way they did that scene in the movie. It was so weird that he was like keeping like a letter hidden away from Harry.
Well, it's because he knew that it was a Hogwarts letter and like they
No,
didn't
of
that.
course. Like if you didn't know, then like it'd be like why if you didn't know that it was for the Hogwarts letter, you'd be like why isn't Harry allowed to read this letter? It's just a letter because we didn't know. I mean, if you didn't know what the letter was about, you'd like wonder why is this child not allowed to read this letter? I mean, how bad could it be?
It's like because like I kind of love how J.K. Rowling have set it up as in like we knew from like the first chapter that like Harry was special and there was like magic and stuff like that, but we still also were kind of in the same vein as Harry in that we didn't know like why couldn't he read his letter, like what was the big deal, like what is going on, sort of thing.
Yeah,
And I
exactly.
really love how like we kind of came along with Harry with the ride and like we learned about magic kind of with him. We like were introduced to like the magical world and Hogwarts and everything like with him.
Yeah,
Really cool.
definitely. The way that they go to a hotel And or first of all, with the cupboard under the stairs part, and then when they move him into Dudley's other bedroom, it says the second bedroom, and then Vernon's like stressing out more, and then they're like, okay, we're going away. We're gonna go so far away they'll something, I can't remember the exact line. And then they go there, and then more letters come saying the same thing, and then they're like, okay, we're gonna go in the middle of nowhere. I like that of just like Vernon needs to realize that this isn't gonna stop, dude.
And the iconic line from the movie, Daddy's gone mad, hasn't he?
Oh my goodness, yeah. I think that was basically it for chapter 3, unless either of you have anything to add.
The ending though is just kind of awesome of just like boom, the door, like Hagrid is, Hagrid's there now. I like that part. One thing that was kind of sad though is like Harry mentioning that like his birthday doesn't matter or anything. Just kind of like, oh my god, that poor child.
And here he gets the best birthday present ever, right? Hagrid.
Yeah. So chapter 4 is, I love chapter 4 just because we get more of an introduction to Hagrid. And like I said, Hagrid's just like this big teddy bear, but he's also like protective and like all that. So we start off by like Hagrid making this dramatic entrance of like the door coming off its hinges, and he's like this huge giant man with like all this hair, and all you can see is like his eyes, and everyone's all scared, and the Dursleys are like flipping out, and then Harry starts getting slowly happier of just like, whoa, there's this whole other side of my life that I didn't know about. I love that part. And he starts getting happy, and it just makes you feel happy for him. Yeah. And Hagrid just kind of like taking over the cabin that they're living in, just like making food, and then his take, and just like Hagrid just kind of, I love that part.
And how like effortlessly he kind of like cows the other Dursleys into submission. Like we've seen through the previous chapters how like the Dursleys like ordered Harry around and treated him like horribly, and then Harry comes in and like Erica said, one takes over the whole cabin. And then also just like effortlessly is like, no, you don't have the power here anymore. I'm the one who's in power here, and Harry has power here too. So you guys can just deal with it.
Yeah, definitely. And I really like this line. He strode over to the sofa where Dudley sat frozen in fear, and he says, "Budge up, your great lump." And it's like,
yeah,
it's so like satisfying to see like someone like talk to like Dudley like that, because he's such a brat of a child.
Yeah, and like Dudley's also terrified because Hagrid's a giant.
But like, yeah, exactly. It's just like the way Hagrid immediately calls Dudley like this great lump. I kind of love that.
He's brutally honest with them. Yeah. It's like it gives you that satisfaction of like, thank you. Someone tells these people how horrible they are.
Someone finally said it.
Yeah, and I love how like defensive he is of like everything. Like when he finds out that the Dursleys hadn't told him anything about his parents, he's just like he gets like angry and upset with them, and he's the first one to just kind of call them out on what they've done, and that's one part that I just love. And like is Harry must have felt so just. It's like the first time he's ever felt like someone truly cared about him, which is like such a huge thing, and it's actually like so important. So
I definitely agree with that, like wholeheartedly.
Definitely. And the way he like defends Dumbledore. I love that part. Just
don't you dare talk bad about Dumbledore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, that's not the exact quote, but
And like also, I mean, we have to address like the way he speaks. It's like there's something so comforting about his like lack of grammar and like just I don't know, just like the way he talks. There's something like super comforting about it. About like he's like maybe he's like the super kind character who might not be like the brightest bulb in the shed, but he's super kind and he's like warm and welcoming and he's like again the first figure that Harry has met in his life who is so like sweet and kind towards him. And so we immediately become like completely attached to him. And I think somehow, just at least for me, somehow in my mind, like his speech just like makes it so much better. But that also could be partly because my grandmothers both had like kind of accents. They both had like kind of French accents, and so the English wasn't always perfect. So maybe it kind of felt nostalgic to me, and I kind of linked it that way. So it kind of felt like comfort. But yeah, I think that's probably why.
One thing I just realized that I forgot to mention is the Easter egg, kind of, to Mrs. Fig. Just like it's kind of an Easter egg. We get introduced to her. We don't really get to know her like at all, but then there's the Easter egg to Order of the Phoenix there. So that's it's always fun finding all those little Easter eggs that you don't notice until you reach a certain book. Forgot to mention that, but
Yeah, exactly. I don't think at least I didn't. Sorry, Maker. I didn't put much thought into like this random lady named Mrs. Fig who he occasionally stayed with. Like I just like the first time I read it, like I didn't think much about it. I was like, oh, she's just like some annoying like but sweet old lady that
I
he has to stay with. But like that's all.
I don't
And
think
then we find out more about her.
I don't think she was ever sweet. I think
Well,
she played her role well of like not trying to show that she knew anything there. I think yeah, that's the one. Like Mrs. Fig, like I said, it's
yeah, I guess sweet isn't the right word.
I like how J.K. Rowling added in, like I said, those Easter eggs that are always fun to find. It shows that like she had like this plan set out already. So
Yeah. I mean, look, there's those Easter eggs, and this was the Easter egg of like all people that Harry like. There was that time I forgot what chapter it was in where he was thinking back to, like all those random people who would like say hi to him in like the stores and stuff like that, and then you later find out those people are like in the Order of the Phoenix and stuff. But yeah, going back to the Miss Fig, I think it's also interesting because that's a big reason why there's so much controversy around Dumbledore now, because we have confirmation of it. Like Dumbledore had someone on the inside watching over Harry and knowing exactly what was going on with him, and then Harry was still in that household for 10 years.
yeah,
Like Mrs. Fig is a big reason why I feel like there's so much controversy around Dumbledore because like she is proof that he knew what was going on.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It's interesting. She's a very interesting character. The original crazy cat lady.
We'll go to our last chapter, which is the most interesting one, in my opinion. This is when Hagrid takes Harry to Diagon Alley, and the best part of this is just how happy Harry is. It makes you feel awesome. He's like, "Oh, it was a dream. This didn't happen," or something like that. But there's one line at the beginning that just makes me feel amazing. Is Harry scrambled to his feet, so happy he felt as though a large balloon was swelling inside him. That's just like it's just like it gives you such a good feeling of like this kid is so happy and excited about this new world that he's part of. I love that part.
Like the previous
Yeah.
chapter set it up so much of like Harry deserves so much, and the readers are rooting for him so much, and he finally gets this like literally magical, like dreamy thing. Like you dream of like learning about this magical world and being part of it.
Totally.
Like his dream comes true, and he deserves it so much.
Yeah, definitely.
And then like it was fantastic to see him so excited. Like I mean, I think we've all had that time when like we've woken up from a dream and like have been super disappointed to realize that it was just a dream. But
Yeah.
like it's so excited for him because you realize that it's not just a dream, it's like reality for him. And you're like, oh my god, this is fantastic, this is spectacular. And suddenly you're like literally pulled right into this new world where you get owls who deliver letters and like wizarding like newspaper, and you're like, what is going on? You're just literally yanked into this brand new weird world of magic.
I love how like Hagrid's just like everyone like when they're still in the Muggle world and Hagrid's like taking him to like the Leaky Cauldron and he's just like this giant dude who's just like all the Muggles are like what is who is this, what's happening. And then of course when they get into the Leaky Cauldron and everyone's like, oh my god, it's Harry Potter, and Harry's just like, what's happening.
What is this?
Like, why is everyone freaking out about me? This has never happened. And it's like, it shows that Harry, like, isn't, like, vain or anything, or, like, he's not, like, egotistic. He's not like, oh, all these people care about me, or yay. It's just kind of like Harry being clueless, which happens. Oh,
I mean, such an
Harry,
amazing.
but he's a clueless idiot sometimes.
Does that count as an Easter egg?
Yeah, it gives you an idea of the area
Yeah.
a little bit. But you know, this part is more like it makes sense that he was clueless.
Amen.
Speaking of being clueless
What
and like humble and stuff, I think that's a great segue to the character we get introduced to in Diagon Alley.
one thing I have to say is like I think we
Which character?
briefly discussed last week how much we love sassy Harry, and I know in this chapter we do get a little bit of sassy Harry when he's in Madame Malkin's getting his robes fixed, and he says like when Draco, it is Draco, right? Yeah, when Draco like says, "Who is that man? Oh my God, who's that man?" And he starts like saying like, "I wouldn't want to know him," and Harry was like, "I quite like him," and
Yeah,
just like straight out like defends like Hagrid, and just is just the sass already is fantastic. I love it.
I love how in this chapter we get introduced to like two antagonists right away. Like we get introduced to Professor Quirrell, who we don't know anything about yet. So it's like it's just okay. It's this stuttering guy, and then we get introduced to Malfoy, but we don't get his name or anything like that.
Yeah,
So it's not like obvious or anything. But we get introduced to this like snooty. Like you already know that he's just like an unpleasant person who's just like very like he's egotistic and just like
yeah.
he's not great, and he disses Hufflepuff, and I'm just like, dude, don't go there. You do not get to do that, bitch.
The
Hell no.
Badgers will trample you.
Yes. One thing that I've always wondered, I want to ask you guys this, is right before, like right when Malfoy asked him his last name, Madame Malkin, she says like, "Oh, you're all done there," and Harry doesn't get to answer, and I'm wondering if she did that on purpose. Like maybe she knew kind of what the Malfoys were like and knew that he was Harry Potter. Do you think she did that on purpose or it's just a coincidence?
Um, I've never really looked much into that, so
Hmm.
I don't know. I'd say it's just a coincidence.
It's an interesting thought, definitely. And
Yeah.
also, Madame Malcolm is like she's old-ish, right? So do you think she would have known James and Lily? Because if she knew James and Lily, she probably would recognize Harry as a Potter because he looks just like James with the lazy eyes. And like it seems like everybody who knew those two immediately recognized Harry as their son.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
Maybe she did know.
yeah, maybe she I don't know if she knew them personally, but she probably knew of them. Like I think most people in the wizarding world know of Harry and like his parents too. So I don't know. They probably like she's probably met them like when they came to get their robes and their school supplies and whatnot. So
Maybe she, yeah. That's an interesting
Maybe
thought.
she just wasn't one of the. Maybe she's just one of those people who isn't phased by like famous people
Yeah.
and things like that.
I
yeah.
feel like if anybody was like that, it'd be Madame Malcolm. She's the kind
Yeah.
of person who just wouldn't be phased.
Yeah. She's also like super busy probably because she has all these like kids getting robes and
Yeah. It's getting. It's like the preschool rush, getting everything
Yeah.
ready. She's probably like super stressed, like not even like properly taking in like the people, like just taking their measurements and that's it. Because
hmm
she has a whole lot of like making robes to do,
hmm
and yeah, there's quite a few reasons why. But it was an interesting thought, Erica.
We forgot to mention Green Gots.
Oh yeah, Gringotts.
Green Gots is like such a not cool place, but it's like I don't know the right word to use, but it's unique in that like I don't think many places like Harry's well, a lot of places in Diagon Alley Harry probably hasn't seen, but it's just it's interesting. It's very interesting to the readers because it's like we get a whole new like species, and I don't know if species is the right word to use.
It
Maybe
is.
I don't know.
I can maybe say that the word you could be looking for is intriguing. Like
Yeah,
this whole new like place is like very intriguing. It's like interesting. It's different. Yeah, and even though we kind of go into the vault, we still there's still so much mystery surrounding it because we don't see much. He's always like he wants to know what everything that's going on. He's like in the cart, but he's like looking around, and it's just like you're just thinking like him, like what is behind these doors. I think that holds quite a lot of mystery.
and we also get two little Easter eggs to Deathly Hollows with Griphook, of course, and mention of dragons protecting some of the vaults. So this two little tiny ones. They aren't huge ones to like anything big, but it's like those two things get addressed. So it's cool to find those little things.
And also
Yeah,
the poem on the Gringotts doors, like the front
yes.
doors, saying that like they don't like people stealing. And then later in the book, you find out that somebody tried to steal from Gringotts.
Succeed. Or Hagrid says something like you have to be mad to try to steal anything, and it's just
Yeah.
like Harry's gonna do that, dude.
Yeah, yeah. Kind of knowing that just makes you want to like giggle and be like, "Ooh, I know
Yeah.
what's gonna happen,"
Yeah.
and it's like kind of fun to see, and you realize that they are mad to do that, but like that's all they can do. They like the reason why they like breaking into the bank is to save the whole world, the whole wizarding world. Otherwise, I mean, obviously they wouldn't have done it.
Yeah. And then I don't know. I feel like the next like big part to mention is just Harry going to Ollivanders and getting his wand. Like that was cool, and I
Oh.
like how we focus. Like there's a decent amount of time on that because it's like important. And Ollivander is like such I don't know. He's such a kooky character. Like they talk about his hair and just I don't know. I like the way he talks and the way they introduce each of the wands he tries. And in so many of these, it's like he barely touches it and he's like, nope, that doesn't work. Not this, not
Nope.
that. And
Yeah.
him, another thing that's really cool is Ollivander telling Harry about his parents' wands was probably like super cool. I feel like every time anyone talks about his parents, probably just like makes Harry so happy because it's like he likes learning about his parents because he knows nothing about his parents before that.
Really, the things he knew were all lies because he was told that his parents died in a car crash, and he was like, "Nope, that's a lie."
Yeah,
So I'm sure he's like, "What else was a lie? What else was like completely biased?" You know? Yeah,
definitely.
yeah. I also love like talking about like Easter eggs and like comparisons. I love how later in the series, I think it was Deathly Hollows or Half Prince or something, but we see Ollivander again, and while in this book he's very much like this detached, like creepy dude who's like holding this like power, like creepy in a way that he's like doesn't blink and he's just like appears and stuff like that, you know. And then later he becomes almost more human when he gets like captured by Voldemort and like he's in like the prisons with Harry and Ron and Hermione and like you see the more like human side of him almost like he's more humanized.
He's more like vulnerable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
kind of I really love how she how J.K. Rowling like contrasted that where in the beginning we're introduced to him as like this creepy detached magical person and then later as Harry grows up we as readers do too and we see past that to like the vulnerable human there.
Totally.
Yeah, I agree. So I liked how you, Erica, said that Mr. Ollivander was kind of I forgot what word you used, but kind of like quirky or weird. And I think definitely in the later books, like we said as well, he becomes more human and like you kind of feel sorry for him almost. You kind of get an understanding that he's quite lonely. You kind of, yeah, you like empathize with him a lot more, and that way he becomes a lot more real, not just this like wand guy.
Yeah, definitely. And then of course when Harry gets finds his wand and then we find out that like Voldemort also got like the brother of the wand and it's just like it's an interesting thing and I think J.K. Rowling like that was a really cool thing that she did of having that like connected wand thing. It shows how like Voldemort is like actually so dumb of just like trying to take someone else's wand when he literally says the wand chooses the wizard and it's just like not dumb but Voldemort's just like he thinks that all these things are like oh no one can stop me like the but it is
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
Voldemort is brilliant but like he's like to quote Ollivander he did great things with that wand. Terrible, but great. Of just
Yeah.
like
yeah.
acknowledging that like Voldemort is a good wizard, but he's a dark evil wizard and who knows how to use magic. And I think that probably scared Harry a bit.
Yeah, can we acknowledge for a second how terribly sentimental Tom Riddle is slash Voldemort is? He's very
Yeah.
sentimental. Like with
In a
the
way,
way,
kind of.
like I feel like the
Wow.
way he created like the Horcruxes and the way he made these things like so meaningful and I feel like he was kind of sentimental. Not in a charming way. In like a very like
Possessive
creepy
way.
way.
I, I don't know if I'd use the term sentimental because like he literally like every single Horcrux that he made he killed someone for. So it's like we can get more into that when we talk
Okay,
about
so not sentimental.
but like he chooses them well.
Yeah.
I feel like no, he doesn't choose them well because like if you're, I mean, I feel like we're going to go into a longer discussion about this later, but like if you're gonna make a Horcrux, don't make it the big like important things or something. Because if you want to keep them alive, don't make it like these big important like
But
heirloom
isn't there
things.
something don't you isn't there like a whole passage or something? Don't you have to make a Horcrux like something sentimental? Like not again sentimental. Don't you have to make it something that's like meaningful? or significant.
The main thing that just stands out is you have to kill someone to make a Horcrux. Maybe he like chooses the person specifically for each Horcrux or something. But I feel like we will probably discuss that a fair bit when we get into Half-Blood Prince.
Yeah.
And then the ending I like where Hagrid like gets him a hamburger and he asks about like, you know, is he dead or not and all that, and Harry gets his ticket and it's just
And Hedwig!
Hedwig, yes.
His
Hedwig.
first like proper birthday present after the cake.
Also his like first kind of like, well, I don't know. Hagrid's probably his first friend, but like Hedwig's probably in that month that he has to wait. Hedwig is like this live being that helps get him excited, you know, that gets him through that last month.
Yeah. But that's going into the 6th chapter now.
Yeah.
As our listeners can probably tell, we are very passionate about Harry Potter.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. That's why we're doing this, you know, and it's so much fun to talk about it. And you know, this was our first chapter by chapter discussion, and I know it's gonna be a lot of fun as we go through the books. And next week we're gonna read the next 3 chapters, so 6, 7, and 8, and we're gonna discuss them. And there's a lot more to talk about because we get introduced to a bunch of people. Most importantly, Ron and Hermione, which is I love the way they're introduced. But again, we'll talk about that next time.
Yeah, thank you guys for joining us. We hope you enjoyed it. We certainly did. It was really amazing going back and reading the story from the beginning again. And just reading it as an older, like having maybe matured a little bit. It was very interesting and it kind of shed new light on different parts of the book for me.
For me, like I said, I only read these books like in the last year, so it wasn't I didn't like see it in a different view, more just like I found myself I don't know, dissecting it more. Not dissecting,
Yeah.
just kind of knowing certain things of, you know, appreciating certain things that happened just because I know what happens in the future, kind of thing, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah, I guess that's a good way to think. But for me, I'm realizing it was like 8 years ago that I read the first book. It's like coming on like almost 10 years. It was just nice to read over the things that I like may have like forgotten.
You guys said most of it. Yeah, it was a lot of fun going back and reading these. I'm very excited to of our future episodes and going back and revisiting other parts of this book and future books.
So just a reminder, next time we're gonna read chapters 6, 7, and 8 and discuss all that. There's a lot of awesome things that we get introduced in those ones. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Please follow, subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time. Erica, say bye. Say goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Hi. Mega saying goodbye and hope you all enjoyed this episode.
Just say goodbye, and I hope you join us next week. And I can't wait to dive into the next chapters.